Okay, well, thanks again for joining me. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Private chat is now open. So what are we going to do today? We're going to go over SAGD in situ assets. We talked a little bit earlier about selection of those assets for your project, and each person is going to pick an asset and do a deeper dive. And so we're going to start from the first asset that I'm very familiar with. It's called MEG Energy Christina Lake. So what you will notice right away, and this is really the heart of the asset, so this will be very representative of all other assets we're going to be reviewing, is that in the middle of the asset, or typically on the side or in the middle, or where the geology is, you will have something that's called central process facility. So this facility, typically what it does, it needs to serve two main functions when it comes to the recovery scheme. It needs to have the capability to generate steam, so and then send it through a pipe, and we can see some of the pipes here. So you can see a pipeline that's going here. I'm not sure if you can see my mouse. Maybe I can use like a pointer. Can you see my mouse? No? Maybe? Let's see. Well, anyway, I'll just zoom into the thing. So those facilities, they need to be able to generate the steam and also handle the water that's coming back with the oil and the gas back to the facilities. So it has basically an option to do something upstream and downstream of the recovery. So for example, if we have a pad here, so that's the pad where the oil is going to be recovered from, we will have injectors and producers. So on one side, we'll have injectors, producers, and downhole, those two will be served as basically as well pairs. So I covered this in the previous lecture where we talked about well pairs. So in this case, I guess you will have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wellheads here, and injectors and producers. You could have more producers, for example, maybe than injectors if you have something that's called infill wells. So those between the chambers, you can have wells that basically land in the middle there. But if you see what leads to the pad, typically it will be like a pipe like this that carries the steam, and then the other one carries the emulsion and the gas back to the CPF. So you can kind of see, and maybe here it goes on the ground, right, on the ground, or maybe inside that little forest there, and or maybe, oh, actually it's getting connected here under the bridge back to the pipe and back to the CPF, as you can see. Yeah, exactly. So if a car is driving near the road, so it's like a little bridge that leads back to the central process facilities like this. So now we zoom out, we can see various pads, right? So not just one pad, we have another pad here that seems like it's much larger, or maybe like two pads, like one kind of uh, footprint of pad, and maybe like a couple of pads being integrated within that section. Then another one here that's, you can see clearly there's much more activity, many injectors, many producers, and here as well. And if we zoom out, we can see basically um, connection that could run over many kilometers, right? Maybe like 5, 6, 7 kilometers towards the pads that sit further away from the CPF. Now let's talk a little bit about steam, and hopefully some of you. Oh, we can see your mouse. Okay, great, thank you. So my question to you is associated with that is that would the steam quality that's generated at the CPF here will be the same on this pad and will be the same on those pads? So we're talking about the steam quality. So I generated steam, and that steam is now traveled. So let's see in the chat if people can say yes, no, maybe some ideas. Would it be the same or no? Think about when you have, let's say, a shower, and maybe it's very hot, right? Would the steam be the same at every elevation of basically your shower? Right? No, right? So Yeah, the answer is no, obviously, because the steam degrades, right? You have heat losses, the steam travels. So now you have to make sure that the steam that's being delivered to those other pads will have, first of all, really good insulation, right? Especially during winter, where when you have like maybe minus 20, minus 30 at times degrees Celsius. And it needs to be produced in enough in a way that it actually is steam that's being delivered and injected underground. So then because it wouldn't make sense to inject water because those steam chambers are very high, right? I mean, last lecture we talked about how our typical human will be like, I don't know, meter 70, meter 60, meter 80. If you like Shaquille O'Neal, you'll be like two something, right? So but the height of the ceiling in your room is maybe like 2.5 meters, 3 meters. Those tin chambers could be 30 meters, right? So it wouldn't make sense to inject just water because that steam needs to rise and you need to develop the chamber. So the steam quality needs to be appropriate for the injection and the recovery scheme. So this is something very important to consider. So when they actually do that, they're being mindful of that capability at the CPF. Now, one of the big things about those recovery schemes is that it's very expensive to build one of those. But once you do, essentially you manufacture pads. So every time a pad goes to a decline, you will probably drill a new pad and then reallocate that steam and produce the oil from kind of the fresh geology and maybe co-inject NCG at the late life for the other pad to maintain the pressure. And this is something we're going to be simulating and learning more in the course. So this asset right here, again, it's Christina Lake, MEG Energy. So what do you guys think are those like little squares? Kind of like if you can see my mouse, like what are those? Like what are those areas? What is that? What could it be? Any ideas? Let's think in terms of, let's say, seismics, right? Maybe coring, maybe better understanding the geology. For example, how did they know to go here, to go more kind of west? How did they know to drill east? Like what is that now? Is this like exploratory process here, like to better understand what the geology looks like? Maybe seismics, right? Maybe cores, right? So this is like initially before you develop this asset, you will do a lot of testing to understand the geology, right? Did you guys learn about this? Exploratory wells, strata wells, right? Stratigraphic wells, is that, yeah, strat wells, right? So this is important because now everything is very expensive. You need to know where to basically have your CPF located. You have to make sure that steam quality has been maintained. You don't want to spend too much money on those pipelines, right, that leading from CPF to the different pads. So you want to be really smart because everything here is in millions and millions of dollars. So that's why understanding the geology prior to drilling, um, you need to know kind of exactly what's going on, and that's how you expand across your asset. By the way, this asset, I think the overall recovery factor for MEG Christina Lake, if I'm not mistaken, it could be a little bit different now based on their proven reserves. I think they produced only about 10% of their overall lease. So they have another like 90% left, which is remarkable, right? Some people say that they could be producing at the same rate for the next like 30 years if they produce this 100,000 barrels per day they produce. So now I'm looking at the recent data from what was reported. So MEG Christina Lake right now, so previous month they produced about 94,000 barrels a day. So this asset, 94,000. And this month they produce 104,000 barrels a day. 104,000. And their SOR is between 2.3 to 2.4. Do you guys remember the importance of SOR? So steam to oil ratio. Now, that metric plays an important role at the CPF, right? Because now that you injected that steam, you produce a certain amount of oil, but you also deliver the water back that was condensed, so you can separate it and re-inject it back, right? So, and by the way, I'm probably going too much over MEG because I'm kind of setting the background to all other assets. So then when we look at them, we don't have to talk about each CPF. We can kind of say, okay, this is kind of what's going on here. Okay, do we have any questions associated with Christina Lake MEG Energy? Let's do a little bit more, kind of zoom in a little bit more here. See, this is a really long pad. See the connection to the CPF? So here on the ground, they probably went like 400 meters on the ground. And those wells, they could be like that long. They could be like a kilometer long, so 1,000-meter long, very long. So underground, this entire network looks very different from what it is on surface. There's a lot of oil being produced from that site, over 100,000 barrels a day. Okay, moving on to the next asset. Is that okay? Okay, so Christina Lake MEG, a neighbor, is anybody wants to guess what this is? Oh, sorry. Cenovus, Christina Lake. Again, same idea. This is Cenovus, huge CPF. A lot of money was spent on those facilities, and now they're basically templating. They're basically producing oil. Now the pad design is a little bit different, as we can see here. So injector producer, injector producer, injector producer. They have those little homes, kind of like almost like little sheds. If you can see, looks a little bit different from what MEG was doing with their template. So let's kind of go in here and see if they see. It doesn't look like they have the same design, but nevertheless, production in this asset right now, let me take a look. So Cenovus Christina Lake right now is it's about 250,000 barrels a day with the lowest SOR in the industry of 2. So they produce between 245,000 barrels per day to 255,000 barrels per day. So that's a lot of production, right? And SOR 2. So for every barrel of steam, sorry, for every 2 barrels of steam injected, you produce 1 barrel of oil back. So SOR 2. All right, next asset. I'll type it here. CNRL Jackfish. So CNRL Jackfish 1, CNRL Jackfish 3, and CNRL Jackfish 2, all those assets, they aggregate them as naming them as Jackfish, but they're not really like one Jackfish. There is a separate CPF, as you can see here, that takes care of very specific regions. So those are their pads. As you can see, again, we get the same idea. We have this pipeline connection, injection of steam, production of the liquids and the gas that going back to the CPF. So you can see the various pads and CPF that handles all that stuff at the back. Obviously, much smaller operation relatively to the neighbors. So this is Cenovus Christina Lake. Like, look at the scale of things here. But now we have smaller guys here. So Jackfish 1, 2, 3. And the production there, it seems like it's about between 36,000 to 38,000 barrels a day. That's the production. CNRL assets. Okay. And here we have Conklin. That's like city, I guess. There's a school here. Remote massage and spa. You can go for a massage. Canada Post. Some homes, neighborhoods. Yeah, somebody's home here. So it gives you a little bit perspective on kind of the people live here west of the lake. What do you guys think the name of this lake is? Well, it says here Christina Lake. Now, one big regulations they all have is that they can drill under the lake. So all the development here is happening in those areas here and all their areas here, but never under the lake. So it's regulated by Alberta. Can you guys hear me okay? Everything is good? Okay, let's go to Suncor Firebag. Okay, so Suncor Firebag is located here. So obviously one of the biggest advantages we have in this process of SAGD is the footprint at surface. So this is what mining looks like on the left. Obviously a lot of footprint. And we talked about the different recovery schemes where you use like a shovel, trucks, delivery, treating, and obviously big difference between in situ production and the impact. So then once you've done the operations, let's say you recovered that pad, you can plant trees here, you can remove all facilities, you can make it basically restore it back to its sustainability kind of status, right? You can see kind of the benefit here, I guess, on the footprint. So I'm always very proud of kind of this recovery scheme because it produces as much oil as the mining minus the significant footprint. So now we're looking at Firebag. Firebag actually so this is their CPF. So again, we're talking about a massive operation here. What they do here is to generate steam, handle the emulsion at the back. This is, I guess, their the village there, where maybe the camp where people sleep, I guess, and the different pads. So we have the pads here. So significant operation here. This is very close to Christina Lake level. Again, we have some pads in this area. Production at Firebag right now is about 254,000 barrels a day. So reminder, Christina Lake, Cenovus was just under 250. Some month it was a little bit over 250. So Suncor Firebag is basically very similar scale to Cenovus' Christina Lake. And yeah, this is one of the sites that one of you may choose to kind of investigate further. Again, the idea here for the entire course is that we pick assets and we understand SAGD baselines. We do a little simulation work, we build a model, and then we compare practical NCG benefits to the SAGD operations. These assets, they do have NCG co-injection. So I'm pretty sure all of the assets I covered. I'm not sure about Jackfish. I think Jackfish is doing that as well, but most of the assets I covered, they do NCG integration. Okay, next asset, let's do Cenovus Sunrise. Bam, Cenovus Sunrise. And notice how I didn't really have to go that far. We just came from Suncor, Firebag, and right next door we have Legacy Husky Energy. But 4 years ago, in 2020, late 2020, Cenovus merged with Husky. It was kind of more of an acquisition where Cenovus acquired Husky, but in my mind, it's really a merger because both of the companies were very big. So this is the Husky legacy design with, I guess, new kind of Cenovus optimization, I guess, layer, I guess, because now you have the integration of those both teams from Husky and Cenovus running this asset. So we see a little bit of a different design, but again, same idea, injectors and producers on the pad. You can see the line that's running from 3 lines here. One line is injection of steam. Second line is emulsion of liquid, so oil and water. And the third line will be the in situ gas that's being produced. And a lot of that gas could be carrying also the NCG back to the CPF. So Husky right here. So very interesting location for them. And again, the benefit, this is more of a mining exercise, right? So curl oil sands, big difference between this and that. All right, so next one. Athabasca Lismer. So Athabasca is a company, right? And you can see not too many pads, so very lean operation. So those are the pads. You can see some activities. Brand new pad. I think it's pad. This one is probably called L8. This is one of their mega pads. A lot of the production is happening here. You can see a lot of activity. They're doing actually a really good job on this pad. I really like what they're doing there. What is this little guy here? Oh, I don't know. Doesn't look very important. But you can see again the pipes, the handling of the movement of the emulsion back to the CPF and steam to the pads. And this is the CPF and other legacy pads. So before they developed kind of this region and went all the way there. And again, you can see those little squares everywhere, right? So those are the cores, the seismics, kind of the geology investigation, regions. So a lot of the production is here. A lot of the production is now here. So this asset right now, Athabasca Lismer, is about between 26,000 to 27,000 barrels a day. SOR is slightly higher than the previous SORs. Here is SOR is 3.3. But again, it's fairly kind of isolated location, and the geology deviates a little bit more from those Christina Lake regions here, right? So there's really nice geology in that region. It's not as nice, but this pad here that they're drilling, the reason why they went there is that the geology is very similar to the Christina Lake geology, which I'm very familiar with. So then they went very strategically to the west, which ended up being a very good decision. And obviously, I want to close the loop on Athabasca Hanging Stone. Hanging Stone. So in the previous lecture, we learned about, I went very technical on this one asset, and you can see why. So this asset, it has 5 pads. So this pad 1, and you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 injectors, 5 producers. Pad 2, pad 3, 4, and 5. So there's 5 of them only. And small CPF. Central process facility. You can see kind of those fluvial flows here, which is, historically when you see that kind of region, you know where the oil is, because underground a lot of things happened through the movement of the various geologies and kind of millions of years basically of deposits there. And what's really cool about this asset is that I covered it in much detail in the previous lecture, and I think I'm getting repetitive, but I think it's important, if let's zoom out here for a second, that you kind of understand the context of kind of where it is. So you have Fort McMurray, Hanging Stone right here, and we did in-depth overview of that asset. Current production there right now is between 7,500 to 7,600 barrels a day. And SOR is about 3.49, so 3.5. So nice small asset. Again, if one of you is choosing to work on this asset, obviously big difference than looking at, let's say, something like a Christina Lake. So which is, where's Christina? Should be here. Yeah, right there. But again, the size of the asset doesn't really matter for this exercises, because it's going to be like one simulation file for like a representative well, and NCG strategy and overview. So of the well pairs or the pad based on the geology. So the fact that one of you may choose the bigger asset doesn't necessarily mean it's more work or less work. Okay, so let's see the time. So I spent about 25 minutes, 5 more minutes, and we'll be done. So I think we covered maybe 5, 6, 7 assets. Let's look at something now in Saskatchewan. So we're going to fly in Saskatchewan now. All right, so here we have a little city called Vaughan in Saskatchewan. Let's zoom out and see where it's at. It's basically in the middle of nowhere. This is Edmonton, and this is the Athabasca region that we talked about, Fort McMurray, and this is Christina Lake, relatively speaking, to Vaughan. So far, far away, many hours of driving. So let's go back to Vaughan right there. So here next to Vaughan, we have two little assets. It's the Legacy Husky Vaughan thermal asset, which is a little SAGD asset. Again, CPF, and we see the connection to the pads. These assets right here, the facilities, they're basically OTHGs, so they generate the steam, and the emulsion treating and gas treating facilities that treat the emulsion that's coming back. And if we go and look at the different pads, we can see injectors and producers here as well. Those will be, I guess, the pumps they use. So big pumps. So not electric submersible pumps. Those will be larger ones. But each asset a different design. And so this asset, this little Vaughan asset, at least based on my notes, could be wrong. I need to revisit the data, but I'm seeing about 5,800 barrels a day. So 5,833 barrels a day. And next to it, there's another asset that's called Strathcona Resources Edom asset. And you guys already know what I'm going to say. This is the CPF. Those are the pads. This is the pipeline. And this asset, Strathcona Edom Thermal, is about 7,200 barrels a day. 7,200. By the way, the previous asset, the Vaughan asset, I need to revisit the production oil rates on that one. It could be very similar to the Strathcona's production rates as well. So those are, this is the Legacy Husky asset, so I'm not that familiar with. This is the Strathcona Edom asset. Okay, let's go to an area that we didn't cover yet. I will pick Strathcona Tucker Lake. Strathcona Tucker. So this is the CPF. Those are the pads, very close to the CPF. But you'll see that the geology looks very, very different. So we have those pads that almost like in line here, like that. But when I zoom out, you'll see lots of little lakes, lots of little water bodies. Here's the Tucker Lake. Any ideas, guys? What's this thing on the right? I'll give you a hint. I'll zoom in on that. That's the Legacy 1970s. It's been operating for about 50 years. That's the Coal Lake region of Imperial Oil. So Strathcona Tucker is SAGD, so you will have injector producers. But this asset, so this is not something we're going to be covering in this course, but this asset is using a different technology. You guys want to type what technology they're using? It's the other thermal technology. So we have SAGD, SAGD, and we have the other one. Yeah, so it's also in situ, so it's in place, but it's called CSS. Cyclic steam stimulation, right? Stimulation, yeah, cyclic steam simulation, where the idea here is a little bit different. Let's zoom into those. It even looks different. So CSS is different than SAGD because what they do here, basically, they also have CPF, steam injection, all that. But what they really do is they inject the steam. So it could be also vertical injectors, right? That's why you have so many of them. That's why you have, it's not horizontal. So it doesn't go horizontally, it goes vertically. That's why you see so many little pads everywhere. And what they do is that they inject the steam, they soak it in the reservoir, and then they produce. So it's really like a one well exercise. But the key here is the sequencing of events. So it's not continuous like SAGD, which is the main benefit in SAGD. So it's continuous steam injection and production nonstop. Here you have steam allocation strategically to some wells, production from other wells, then soaking in some other wells, and you have the cyclical kind of almost like sequencing of allocation. A lot of project management, as you can imagine, from to what goes where, but the cost for, let's say, drilling are a little bit less because you don't drill necessarily horizontal wells. There may be optimizations now that they drill horizontal wells. I'll need to do a little bit of a deeper dive into that, but you understand that it's a little bit less expensive, but it requires a lot of basically scheduling. So that's CSS. This is their Moscow plant right there. There's another plant here. Macassus plant 5. Esso Macassus. Imperial Oil, very good company. Okay, and let's pick one final asset there. We're going to look at Greenfire Resources expansion site. So Greenfire, what's really unique about this asset is that this entire thing is one company. So Greenfire Resources. But you can see this is their demo original asset where I think it's like about 25 years ago, when they built the CPF and tried to prove the concept. So those are like really old legacy pads from 25 years ago. This production here is very small, actually. I think it's, I don't know, under 3,000 barrels a day, to be honest. Yeah. So, and what happened then is that they had really this nice geology here in this region. But guess what happened in between? Like, look at this body of water here. There's a river runs through, and lots of woods and lots of hills and different kind of geographic and geological challenges there. So they had to build, well, not rebuild, but build a new one, a new CPF, which is this one, and integrate all of those pads in the same way like previous assets. You see there's some work going on there. Yeah. So that's kind of what's going on with Greenfire. Current production between those two assets in Greenfire. So here and here. Oh, look, the famous barbecue. What is that all about? The famous barbecue. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, that doesn't look that doesn't look like a famous barbecue. Oh man, that's so funny. Like, what is this chair? The famous barbecue. Anyway, so production on this asset right now on the famous barbecue is it's about 25,000 barrels a day. Okay. So we at 34 minutes. So I think it's a good time to finish. And I think I'm really glad we finished at the famous barbecue here, which I think it's pretty funny. Any questions in the chat? And you guys know what to do for this week, right? We talked about this in the previous session. Yeah, please. Yeah, and I'll sign it right away and scan it and send it back to you. Thank you so much. Yeah. So thank you again for your time. I think it was a fun session. It was fun for me to kind of hover and see and what's going on in the different regions, and hopefully it gives you a little bit perspective, like what physically it looks like. But then obviously a lot of the work we do is kind of deep inside the earth, right? Like trying to produce the oil, do it in an economic way, do it in environmentally friendly way. So we're not going to be looking at barbecue chair pictures too often, but I enjoyed it. It was fun. Okay, guys. Well, we'll talk next week. So same time. And lecture 2 is available as well online. So for your convenience. So thank you so much. All the best. Bye bye.